So next on the agenda here is our very own Brooklynn Ritter. And she is a operations manager here at Curricula. She does a lot of stuff, has her hands in quite a bit. And she's going to talk about building the circle of trust amongst this community. So with this awesome effect, I am going to slide off screen and bring on Brooklynn.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I don't know about you guys, but we've been working remotely for a while, so it's great to be in the office. Thank you to Nick. Thank you to everyone who's here for our first ever Curriculaville. So as Nick mentioned, and as you can see here, my name is Brooklynn. I am the business operations manager here at Curricula, working alongside Dee Dee every single day, who's in the chat. And today I wanted to talk to all of you about one of my favorite topics, which is trust, and how specifically trust is intertwined with data security, especially when it comes to our business-to-business relationships, which I know we don't think about that often. And so for those of you who are wondering, I am standing in front of the Capitol building here at Curricula, and you can find this in my favorite episode, which ironically enough is privacy. So I highly recommend checking it out if you're interested. So jumping straight in and staying in this vein of trust. A lot of times in our industry, you'll hear a phrase or several similar to trust but verify. Nick says it all the time in the office, almost every single day. And although this does make sense, trust and then verify, it's a healthy way to interact with people and businesses. We do find that there's this trend of the idea of trust but verify getting flipped upside down. So in other words, verify then trust, especially for those of you who may be responsible for procurement. So when we're verifying a tool's capabilities, we get so caught up in checking off these boxes of features and functions or compliance standards that taking into account how much we actually trust this vendor can kind of fall by the wayside at the very bottom of this laundry list of kind of black and white check boxes that we're trying to adhere to, which truthfully leaves our business vulnerable. And I find this ironic because aside from trust and communication being the two core building blocks of our personal relationships, they somehow get lost in the mix when it comes to B2B. And I know it's been said more than once that any cybersecurity professional is a natural-born skeptic, take that as you will, at least to some extent, which we will dive into this concept a little bit more later. But a lot of us responsible for procurement are like gatekeepers when it comes to what tools everyone can and can't use. And ultimately, it falls on us if we sign off on a product that one day compromises confidential information via a hack or some other kind of security incident. So however true or false this natural skeptic concept may be, we as security professionals do tend to end up with a certain reputation among our peers that I'm sure we could talk about all day long. But for the most part, it generally involves being known as someone who is devoted to the details, rarely cuts corners, kind of like Dwight here, who is admittedly my favorite character from The Office, and there's no shame. But some people can see this as annoying or tedious or whatever it may be. But being that detail-driven person that a lot of you likely are, I want you to picture this and try not to tense up because it is just a thought exercise. But imagine your VP schedules a last-minute meeting with you today or tomorrow, sends a quick follow-up note letting you know that they need help with a special project. So in this meeting with your VP, you learn that you lucky special security person, are officially tasked with procuring all the tools and applications across your entire organization's tech stack. So in plain terms, you need to locate and identify every type of SaaS product your colleagues are using on a day-to-day basis, and then you need to report this back to your very awesome VP. And I am referring to every single tool that anybody uses at any given time throughout the year. So yes, fun stuff here. So from end-to-end automation through your marketing machine, utilizing a CRM and social media, to whatever your sales team uses for the full cycle buyer's journey, and of course, all the products used by every other department in between, there can be no stone left unturned because all these tools ultimately interact with your business's data and your customers' data. And I know for some of you, this is already part of your day-to-day job responsibilities. It's part of mine, so I do apologize if you're cringing. But if that's the case, then maybe you relate a little bit because you've likely already adopted your own method of grading and justifying what's worth paying for, what's permitted for use and what's not. And you may have even automated this to a certain degree to make your life easier. So with that being said, I would love for you to think about how we might revamp this assessment, especially with the intention of adding trust to the framework. So starting with my first question for you, as it applies to this special procurement project, aside from the obvious checkboxes around compliance, are there any standout qualities you're looking for when deciding which of these tools are permitted in your tech stack and which are not? So features and functions aside, are you looking at the company's recent PR maybe, or how long they've been in business? And outside of its capabilities, what do you want to see from a B2B partner? What's valuable? Again, moving away from the black and white checkboxes and thinking about what this company is made up of and the people inside of it. And next thing, when we're assessing each of these vendors, how easy would it be for you to get in touch with a real human should you need tech support or assistance with the compliance form, or just want to talk to someone, a real person, not an automated email, not an automated chat function, but actually speaking with another living, breathing human being, not a bot. Keep in mind, I do know the hypothetical task that we're talking about here, wrangling all these tools and technologies and putting together a report is enough work already. But when it comes to the act of sharing data, as Michael mentioned in our first session earlier today, more often than not, there is a missing piece of the puzzle that bears a greater burden, and that is trust and how much we trust a vendor. And to that point, I have two more questions for you. The first of which is, what SaaS product could your company or maybe just your department not survive without? I want you to think about it right now. It'd be an absolute nightmare to lose this product, the security person or your head of business operations says, hey, we can't use this anymore. What product being removed from your day-to-day would just make your job an absolute nightmare? And a follow-up to that question, which I think is number one for our topic here today, is in all seriousness, whether this product is a huge company or it's some small obscure app, how much would you say you really trust this vendor to keep your data secure in terms of reliability and their security practices? And just to build off of this example a little bit, I can think of quite a few celebrities who a couple weeks ago would say that they trust Twitter. They generally assume Twitter has solid security practices, but as of today, it's likely a different story. So if you're comfortable, you don't have to let me know the platform, but I would be curious to hear in the chat, just drop a yes or no, if you trust this must-have vendor, or if you're kind of using it because you absolutely need it, and no, maybe you don't trust them so much, it's just a necessary evil for operations at this point. And staying on track with this must-have software or tool that's on your mind now, whether it's something widely used like Salesforce or Slack, or it's a lesser known platform, we do tend to forget that when we say we use this product or we partner with that business, behind the clouds and the clicks, there are people who, as we all know, are capable of human error, who ultimately may or may not care about the data that they interact with on a day-to-day basis. When we're assessing what vendors are worthy of joining our tech stack and therefore have access to so much vital information, I think it's worth considering the who behind the what. Because if Twitter's employees were better trained, to defend against social engineering attacks, full disclosure, I'm slightly biased, but maybe Elon Musk wouldn't have promised so many people a certain amount of Bitcoin a couple weeks ago. So aside from covering the obvious priority of a product being useful and whether or not our employees actually love it and are enjoying engaging with it, we can start to see the value in building trust into our vendor assessments. Because beyond the software's capabilities, it's imperative that we can integrate it into our tech stack with confidence that it won't become a security liability that falls on our watch because we signed off on it later down the road. So with that being said, I'm advocating for trust in business-to-business relationships because however conjectural it may sound, it matters. And I want this to be top of mind for everyone. We're going to get to a few quick, simple steps that you can take later on when you're doing these assessments to start to gauge trust. And I think that we can all agree, despite how tedious this project from our hypothetical VP may be, any company is the sum of all its parts, and it can only be as good as the people in it. So how often are people generally thinking about trust when it comes to who we do business with? So I found this surprising. I'm a research nerd, as a lot of my colleagues will confirm, but when I went to find the data, if these trends that I stumbled upon are any indication, the importance of trust is actually on the rise. So CMO's survey, February 2020 results, which Dee Dee will link in the chat below for you, suggest that a record 27.2% of buyers now make it a top priority above cost to develop a trusting relationship with vendors and their marketing methods, which means that as of this year, 2020 specifically, the people part is really starting to matter. And this got me thinking in terms of the people in a business and how this traces back to leadership. The people makeup in any and every company, whether it's large or small, starts and ends with leadership. So whether the leader of a company is involved and takes responsibility or not, company leaders are driving company culture, either intentionally or through direct effort, or possibly indirectly in how they speak and carry themselves in front of their team. So thinking back to this VP who gave you this awesome procurement project and all the tools that potentially interact with customer data and company assets, despite how annoying this project may be for you, it's a strong indicator that you're at an organization that values securing information. And that's a really great thing that you should look for in your vendors as well. So if a company's leaders are vocal about being dedicated to data security, this inevitably radiates through all the operations, trickles down through every department, and it becomes a part of that company and how each of these employees approach their day-to-day activities. It becomes known internally that there's a level of operational trust at play, and it will impact how each of these employees handles your business's data once it's in their hands. So you as a buyer can begin to trust that this company is true to its marketed identity, that they value their customers, and the data shared between them is treated with care. I remember at my previous company, our security person used to tell every single individual that worked there to treat their laptop like a stack of $1 million bills. And she was absolutely right, because if the wrong person had access to my laptop, right, and could get access to everything inside of it, it could easily be worth $10 million, not just $1 million. And I love that. The flip side of this, obviously, something maybe we don't want to think about, but should consider, is a company that isn't managing your data responsibly. That is an ongoing and insidious liability that should be avoided at all costs, which is why we need to build trust into this assessment framework. So with all of this being said, where does the concept of trust fall in the decision-making process, and how do we actually apply it realistically and go beyond conjecture? So with some help from my team here at Curricula and some of my other mentors who you talked with today in cyber, I've gathered a few things that you can consider when assessing a vendor that will help you make a strong decision to ensure your assets stay safe long after the partnerships are done. So the first action item on the list that I think is probably the most important, and this might rock the boat a little bit, but I highly recommend replacing these massive peer review sites with a real human network. So bear with me, I'm going to justify this tip. Cyber people stick together. If you're in the industry now, you probably know this. And again, it's because we have this reputation as being Dwight Schrutes. So all the Dwight Schrutes stick together and can relate to each other. So ditch these peer review sites, not entirely, but take them with a grain of salt and start to speak with people in your network. Even if you don't know anyone in person, my experience, especially on LinkedIn, has been if I connect with people and I send a short note and let them know that I just would be happy and proud to join their network, everyone in the industry so far has been very receptive. So start building this network on LinkedIn if you don't know people in person or in your local area, and reach out to them. Ask them what vendors they use, what vendors they've transitioned away from, and be sure to ask why in any instance. Get real stories from real people as much as you can, and do not put too much stock into paid ambassadors who troll a lot of these peer review websites. It's real. They dominate review boards, which unfortunately is something that we see all the time, not just in tech, but pretty much everywhere in this influencer culture that we live in now. So we all know people are sent free products, or they get to have a feature on a website or something for some sum of money. There's some form of exchange there. But you know that if a peer or a friend or a colleague is offering this rave review and sharing real stories with you and telling you they can't live without it, they have no reason to lie. They're not getting paid to say it. So again, going back to this first tip is branch out of that peer review site and start to talk to people in your network who have used some of these vendors. The next tip I have on the list, and you might start to notice a trend here, but is try to talk to a human being at this company that you're doing work with. Bonus points if you can speak with someone outside of sales. So alongside my very strong recommendation to submit support tickets while you're in your pilot or free trial, see how simple or difficult it is to get on the phone with someone, set up a Zoom call, and again, submit those support tickets and maybe try to branch outside of the sales department and talk to someone. Any company that values their customers' needs is going to put forth their best effort to meet you halfway wherever they can and offer reassurance. So it's a lot easier to feel a vendor and their company culture out when you can engage with someone at least audibly, even if it's not on Zoom, instead of just through an email exchange or a live chat, especially if they utilize automation. And then the last tip that I have for you is to get curious about companies' leadership. So as we touched on earlier, leaders are responsible for determining and promoting the company's mission and values from which all operations stem. So when the waters get rocky, as they inevitably do at any given company, the leader is going to be the lighthouse that helps everyone stay focused and assured. If an organization lacks strong leadership, or if you find that leadership is kind of muted, you can bet that their ability to actually deliver for customers is at absolute best faulty. So I recommend connecting with or following CEOs, VPs of this vendor on LinkedIn to gain insight into what kind of attitude is driving the company culture. So tying all this together and in closing, I know that procurement is a lot. We're going to wrap up this hypothetical project. It may seem like a stretch to consider something as intangible as trust when there are so many other responsibilities on your plate and so many compliance boxes to check. But it could be the difference between secure data and an avoidable loss from a third-party breach. So again, to keep things simple, at least check to see if the company has a security team or a security leader in place. Again, connect with this person on LinkedIn. If they don't have a security leader, or if you're unable to kind of figure that out, feel free to point them in the direction of Curricula, because we are, of course, here to help educate people on cyber risk. And above all else, I would say, remember that you always have a choice. So peer review boards aside, feedback from your peers aside, get on a call, submit a support ticket, talk to people, follow the company, look at their PR, and make a decision for yourself and assess whether or not you actually trust this business to be in partnership with you, because that's what a B2B relationship is. They should be treated as partnerships. And as such, it's so, so important to trust the people who we work with, even if it's just a quick LinkedIn connection or a 5-minute phone call. It could make the world of a difference later down the line. So if you're curious to know about the people at Curricula and why our customers chose us, be sure to tune into our 3:30 panel, where we have a couple of our customers who also happen to be very inspiring leaders in the security space, who have stories to tell about why they chose Curricula and what that procurement process was like for them. But on that note, thank you so much for your time.